Okay, I'm back to reading the next chapter, chapter 2 of Prisoners of Geography by Tim Marshall. Um, I decided to record this rather than do a live stream. There's a lot more perks, benefits, and precautions you can take by doing a recording rather than live streaming. And there's two key reasons. One is that if I'm live streaming and then I'm kind of fiddling around in the background, I might reveal my emails or some password by accident. I don't want that to go out into the cyber, what's it called, space. And I thought it's best to be a bit more cautious. So record it and then edit things out that I might not want to be going out there. The second thing is that when I was live streaming, there were people having a chat, but I was so focused on reading the book that I didn't really give much attention to the chat stream, and I think that's kind of rude. So I think this is more of a case that this is more of a academic sort of like stream where we're doing some active reading and active research to a lot of the terms and regions and districts and seaports and sea lines and trade routes, and this is quite a lot more attention. There's only so much one person can do on their own. The other thing is that curiously, I didn't put the desktop audio on the OBS, and I was just recording straight from the speaker of my desktop, which is a bit weird. So I've set everything up so the audio of the videos that we're looking at to reinforce the points and some of the arguments presented. You can hear that as well. So without further ado, let's start with chapter 2 of Prisoner of Geography. Chapter 2, China. China is a civilization pretending to be a nation. Lucian Pai, political scientist. Okay, it's big. It's big. That's what she said. So you can see it here. This is actually more of a clearer sort of like perspective of just how big China is. I'd say it's approximately 2, maybe 3 times bigger than India. It borders quite a few countries, doesn't it? It's got Vietnam there. It's got Thailand there. It's got Burma, Myanmar. It's got Bangladesh there. Has it got Bangladesh there? No, it hasn't got Bangladesh. It's got Bhutan. It's got Assam. What's that? Is that Bangladesh? I don't know. There's India. That's India. India goes all the way through here. Anyway, don't want to do that. What did I pick that for? Okay. All right, let's begin. In October of 2006, the US Navy supercarrier group led by the 1,000-foot USS Kitty Hawk was confidently sailing through the East China Sea between southern Japan and Taiwan. So we can see the East China Sea there. That's the East China Sea. Minding everyone's business when without warning. Minding everyone's business. That's quite funny. When without warning, a Chinese Navy submarine surfaced in the middle of the group. An American aircraft carrier of that size is surrounded by about 12 other warships with air cover above and submarines cover below. The Chinese vessel, a Song-class attack submarine, may well be very quiet when running on electric power, but still this was the equivalent of Pepsi-Cola management popping up in a Coca-Cola board meeting after listening under the table for half an hour. That's actually quite a good analogy, but let me just check a few points of reference. A few points raised here. So the USS Kitty, I want to see how big this is.
Welcome back to the news at 6. It now appears that South Texas will serve as a sort of burial ground for one of the mightiest ships in the U.S. Navy.
The aircraft carrier Kitty Hawk, named for the place in North Carolina where the Wright brothers flew the first powered airplane, was towed to Texas.
It was the final voyage the mighty Kitty Hawk towed past South Padre Island to Brownsville, where it will be chopped up and sold for scrap. A ghost from another era when ships ran on oil and when the world was a much different place. Launch day, 1961.
The Kitty Hawk is now the largest new four-style aircraft carrier that has just arrived in the Pacific.
Then on to the war in Southeast Asia in the 60s and 70s. And into the battle zone again when airstrikes were launched against Iraq in 2003. But as the Navy began replacing carriers with nuclear power, the end was near for Kitty Hawk. Veterans organizations worked hard to allow them to convert it into a floating museum, but the Navy said no. Its fate was sealed when the salvage company in Texas paid a grand total of 1 cent to take possession of the Kitty Hawk and to sell off the metal for scrap. They say it will take 18 months to dismantle the ship. Gone forever from the oceans of the world, but forever alive in the pages of history and in the memories of those thousands of sailors who called it home.
It's quite huge. I want to see the Song class attack submarine. What does that mean? Song class attack submarine. Oh, and this will be quite good. It seems a lot of vehicles are looking at going to hybrid these days. Well, this is kind of like 4 years ago. This is even longer. Let's go a bit forward. Submerged speed. Test depth. 300 meters. 300 meters. Range, crew 60, 51. Hang on a sec. Let's just go here. Crew 51. Endurance 45 days, 21 days. Propulsion. Let's see the weapons. That's what we need to look at. Armaments. Torpedo tubes. Okay. A lot of these stats, they kind of like gone over my head. I don't know anything about submarines except for the hunt for Red October anyway. Let's continue. The Americans were amazed and angry in equal measure. Amazed because they had no idea a Chinese sub could do that without being noticed. Angry because they hadn't noticed and because they regarded the move as provocative. You're on their freaking turf. What do you expect? What do you think? Typical Americans. Go to a place in the middle of nowhere, say, I'm American. Everyone speaks English. Okay. What was it going? Provocative. Especially as the sub was within torpedo range of the Kitty Hawk itself. They protested, perhaps too much. And the Chinese said, oh, what a coincidence. Us surfacing in the middle of your battle group, which is off our coast. We had no idea. This was 21st century reverse gunboat diplomacy, whereas the British used to heave a man of war off the coast of some minor power to signal intent. The Chinese hove into view off their own coast with a clear message. We are now a maritime power. This is our time. This is our time, our place, and this is our sea. It has taken 4,000 years, but the Chinese are coming to a port on a ship lane near you. Foreshadowing there. Until now, China has never been a naval power, with its large landmass, multiple borders, and short sea routes to trading partners. It had no need to be, and it was rarely ideologically expansive. Its merchants have long sailed the ocean to trade goods, but its navy did not seek territory beyond this region. The difficulty of patrolling the great sea lanes of the Pacific, Atlantic, and Indian Ocean was not worth the effort. It was always a land power, with a lot of land and a lot of people. Now nearly 1.4 billion. I just saw recently that Indian population has surpassed that of China. Let's go here. Here's one I made earlier. Look at India, 1.467 billion. And China's like 1.41 billion. So it's kind of like, let's do the maths here. So it's like 64 million, isn't it? Yeah, 64 million. That's like the population of the UK. Where's the UK gone? 70 million. It's like 5 million or more. Flipping heck. Let's go here. Migration. Everyone's leaving. United States, look at that, 1,000 migration. It's huge. And the UK, 63. Out of what? Can I make this longer? Let me make this long. Make this bigger. Okay. This is quite interesting. UK, America's everyone's leaving China and leaving India, and they're becoming more powerful. US is a declining power, and migrants are coming in. No, don't look too much into that though. You got like 1.1 million Pakistanis leaving. Got what's it called? Nearly 400,000 Bengalis leaving. Let's go to my country, Blighty. Let's go to Blighty. How many people are going? 364,000 are coming in. It'd be quite interesting stats to look at, but let's get back to the book. Okay. All right. The concept of China as an uninhabited entity began almost 4,000 years ago. The birthplace of Chinese civilization is the region known as the North China Plain, which the Chinese refer to as the Central Plain. A large, low-lying tract of nearly 160,000 square miles. It is situated below Inner Mongolia. Okay, let's go here. Inner Mongolia. There's Inner Mongolia. It's situated below Inner Mongolia. South of Manchuria. Okay, where's Manchuria? Manchuria, China. Oh, for flip's sake, don't go. It goes to the UK, freaking looks for all the restaurants here. Pricks, alright. I think I need to bring up a translator. Hang on a sec. Google. Let's go English. Where's English gone? English is here. Should I say Mandarin or just Chinese general? Chinese simplified. Okay. Let's go here. Manchuria. Huh? Manchuria. Okay. Saves me going from. There we go. There we go. And the Mongol. I'd say it's around there actually, but I don't. Am I right or what? Let's go traditional Chinese. Manchuria. Anyway, in and around Yellow River Basin. Okay, let's see the Yellow River Basin. The Yellow River Basin, called the cradle of Chinese civilization. Let's go bring this up. I can't see it properly. Yellow River Basin. Oh, for goodness sake. Keeps zooming into where I don't want to go. Yellow River. Okay, the Yellow River. Okay, so it's kind of around there, isn't it? Yeah, pretty much. The yellow. Can't see that. Okay. Beijing. All right, it's there. All right, I'll just go there, yeah. Where's Beijing? Beijing there. Okay. Just said Lower Mongolia, all right. And down past the Yangtze River, which both run west to east. It is now one of the most densely populated areas in the world. That's interesting to know, actually. I want to see where the Yangtze River is. The Yangtze River. Okay. The Yellow River Basin is subject to frequent and devastating floods, earning the river the unenviable sobriquet of Scourge of the Sons of Han. Sobriquet. Let's go here. Oh, for goodness sake. Can anyone tell me what this means? Hang on a second. Let's go here. Familiar given to a person, place. All right. It's just kind of a nickname then. All right. The industrialization of the region began in earnest in the 1950s and has been rapidly accelerating in the last 3 decades. The terribly polluted river is now so clogged with toxic waste that it sometimes struggles even to reach the sea. Nevertheless, the Yellow River is to China what the Nile is to Egypt. The cradle of its civilization, where its people learnt to farm, to make paper and gunpowder. How far does this go? I want to see how far this Yangtze River go. Hang on a sec. I'm going to say World Great Rivers. Images. Okay. All right, so you got the Nile there, you got the Amazon there. This is where you get a better look at the river. But you can't make it out here, actually, to be quite honest. Okay. Anyway. To the north of this proto-China were the harsh lands of the Gobi Desert in what is now Mongolia. I say Gobi Desert. What is now Mongolia, but anyway. Gobi Desert, Mongolia. Gobi Desert. Okay. To the west, the land gradually rises until it becomes a Tibetan plateau, reaching to the Himalayas. To the southeast and south lies the sea. Okay. To the southeast and south lies the sea. All right. Let's see what we have here. It's how... Okay. It's not so easy, is it? Okay. The heartland, as the North China Plain is known, was and is a large fertile plain with 2 main rivers and a climate that allows rice and soybeans to be harvested twice a season, double cropping, which encouraged rapid population growth. By the 1500 BCE, in this heartland, out of 100 of many city-states, many warring with each other, emerged the earliest version of a Chinese state, the Shang dynasty. This is where what became known as the Han people emerged, protecting the heartland and creating a buffer zone around them. See the Shang dynasty. Get some more details about the Shang dynasty. The Shang dynasty reigned from 1600 to 1046 BC. Was the first Chinese dynasty supported by both archaeological evidence and written record. Centered in the Yellow River Valley, this era marked the beginning of China's Bronze Age, known for advanced bronze metallurgy. Alright, be quiet. The earliest Chinese writings, oracle bones, and refined social structures. Okay. The Han people. Okay, the Han people. I want to see the Han people as well. Get us a deep of... The Han people are the world's largest ethnic group, comprising over 1.4 billion people, roughly 17 and 80% of the global population. Got flabbergasted there. And are the majority of China, Taiwan and Singapore, originating along the Yellow River in northern China. They expanded southwards, absorbing various groups over millennia while maintaining a distinct cultural, linguistic and historical identity. It's echoed here, isn't it? The Han now make up over 90% of China's population, and they dominate Chinese politics and business. They're differentiated by Mandarin, Cantonese, and many other regional languages, but united by ethnicity, and at a political level, by the geopolitical impulsion to protect the heartland. Mandarin, which originated in the northern part of the region, is by far the dominant language and is the medium of government, national state, television, and education. Mandarin is similar to Cantonese and many other languages when written, but very different when spoken. This is why a lot of people say Chinese script. I've heard it. I might be wrong. That they call it Chinese writing, but the language spoken is quite different, especially with the dialects when you consider the vastness of China. The heartland is a political, cultural and demographic and, crucially, the agricultural center of gravity. Actually, let's look at this. This has kind of intrigued me a bit. Go away! The agricultural center of gravity. About 1 billion people live in this part of China. Despite it being just half the size of the United States, which has a population of 322 million. So let's compare. China. So it's kind of this region. This is where most people live. Let me see. Is there like a population map? Call it like a heat map or something, or world. World population distribution. This is what I want to see, actually. So, for flip's sake, but I need something a bit more. This is quite a good map, but population density. Let's look at this. All right, this will be better. Let's get this. Look at that population, 1,000. Look at how dense that thing is. Look at that. MashaAllah, as the Muslims say. You got North Korea, South Korea, but yeah, it's quite densely populated. But let's look at a key here. Russia's like freaking empty. Look at that. Mongolia is empty as well. That's quite dense. So it's like population per square kilometer is about 100, 150,000. It's quite densely populated, but this is like it's dispersed across the country. We don't want that. I want something that shows you this is good, but there's no key per se. Population density Yeah, this is quite good. All right. Here we go. India is like there's a lot of people in the north of India. And yeah, they're quite densely populated around here. So I'm going to keep this map up. It's going to be quite interesting to refer to this map. I'll add this as a point of reference for us. Rivers, let's close that one. I don't need that really, do we? Maybe we do. I'll find it later. Because the terrain of the heartland lent itself to settlement and an agrarian lifestyle. That's like a village that was called agricultural lifestyle. Why is it not set up? Hang on a sec. Just want to double check the meanings of terms. Even though I might know some of them, but I don't want to take no risk. It's about getting the terms correct. Okay. And the early dynasties felt threatened by the non-Han region which surrounded them, especially Mongolia, with its nomadic band of violent warriors like Genghis Khan. Shades of Genghis Khan, they never forget that. Okay. China chose the same strategy as Russia, attack as defense, leading to power. As we shall see, there were natural barriers which, if the Han could reach them and establish control, would protect them. It was a struggle over millennia, only fully realized with the annexation of Tibet in 1951. So Tibet, let's go Tibet. Tibet's around here, isn't it? Where's it gone? Tibet. Where's Tibet? Where's Tibet? Tibet's here. Here we go. Tibet. Oh, that. Okay. By the time of the famous Chinese philosopher Confucian, born 551 before the Common Era to 479 of the Common Era, there was a strong feeling of Chinese identity and of a divide between civilized China and the barbarous regions which surrounded it. This was a sense of identity shared by 60 million or so people. By 200 before the Common Era, China had expanded towards but not reached Tibet. Okay, so they kind of were all here and they were shifting over here. Okay. Where's it gone? In the southwest north of the grassland of Central Asia and south all the way down to the South China Sea. So they're kind of coming down here. Okay. Where's it gone? The Great Wall, known as the Long Wall of China, had been first built by the Qin dynasty. Is it Qin? If I got that right, it was a Qin dynasty. Let me see how you pronounce that. And that's the other thing we're so good about this. Pronunciation. Get on with it.
Of the Qing dynasty, Qin Shi Huang, for example.
Qing dynasty, okay. Okay, Qing dynasty was beginning to take form on what we now recognize as its modern form. It would be more than 2,000 years before today's borders were fixed, however. Between 605 and 609 of the Common Era, the Great Canal, centuries in the making, and today the world's longest man-made waterway. I'll say, let's see the Great Canal in China. China. I want to see a map of it. Okay. Where's it gone? The Grand Canal. Where's the Grand Canal gone? Or is that all? Where's it gone? Give a better key for it. All right. The courses of the Grand Canal. Okay, it's all that. Okay. The other thing is the Great Wall of China. We mentioned that. Go dark mode. Okay. So it's waving all the way around, bordering all of, cutting all that off, isn't it? Cutting all of Mongolia off. All right. The world's longest man-made waterway was extended and finally linked to the Yellow River to the Yangtze. The Sui dynasty, reigned between 581 and 618, had harnessed the vast number of workers under its control and used them to connect existing natural tributaries into the navigable waterways between the two great rivers. This tied the northern and southern Han to each other more closely than ever before. It took several million slaves 5 years to do the work, but the ancient problem of how to move supplies south to north had been solved. But not the problem which exists to this day, that of flooding. The Han still warred with each other, but increasingly less so, and by the early 11th century of the Common Era, they were forced to concentrate their attention to the waves of Mongols pouring down from the north. The Mongols defeated whichever dynasty, north or south, then came up against and by 1297, their leader Kublai Khan became the first foreigner to rule all of the country as emperor of the Mongol Yuan dynasty. Let's have a look at this. Kublai Khan. Get this one out of the way, it's too bright. Wikipedia. Kublai Khan. Oh, for God's sakes. Dark mode. Okay. Better. Kublai Khan, known by his temple name, the Emperor Shizu of Yuan, and his regnal name, Setsen Khan, was found and first emperor of the Mongol-led Yuan dynasty of China. He proclaimed the dynastic name Great Yuan and ruled Yuan China until his death in 1294. Kublai was the second son of Toloi by his chief wife, Sargagtani Beki, and the grandson of Genghis Khan. He was almost 12 when Genghis Khan died in 1227. Okay. He had succeeded his older brother Mongke as Khagan in 1260, but had to defeat his younger brother Arik Bokki. Alright, so he's just gone into too much detail, so I have a sense he was like Genghis Khan's grandson. It would be almost 90 years before the Han took charge of their own affairs with the establishment of the Ming dynasty. And now there was an increasing contact with traders and emissaries from the emerging nation states of Europe, such as Spain and Portugal. The Chinese leaders were against any sort of permanent European presence, but increasingly opened up the coastal regions to trade. It remains a feature of China to this day that when China opens up, the coastland region prosper, but the inland areas are neglected. The prosperity engendered by trade has made coastal cities such as Shanghai wealthy, but that wealth has not been reaching the countryside. This has added to the massive influx of people into urban areas and attenuated regional differences. So kind of fortified the regional differences. Okay, where's Shanghai? Shanghai. Hang on. There's Shanghai. Is there like a map where it talks about the wealth distribution? Wealth distribution. Global map. It'd be quite interesting to see that. Wealth map. Yeah, it'll be quite. That's 2018. Okay, so Yeah, but it's not. It just looks like a dense distribution. I want something that's a little bit more goes into granular, finer details. I don't think you're gonna find that, are you? Not like the population map. What's it called? Yeah, the population map. Anyway. And let's go back to reading. But the wealth has not been reaching the countryside. Accentuating regional differences. In the 18th century, China reached into parts of Burma and Indochina to the south. And Xinjiang, I need to see if I'm pronouncing this properly. Xinjiang officially. Okay, let's go here. I want to pronounce this properly. I don't want to keep saying stupid. Don't want to be offensive to people.
Terrorist organization with terrorist organizations outside of Xinjiang. And there have been
Xinjiang.
terrorist incidents in Xinjiang and in other parts.
Xinjiang.
Uyghur, all the people running the show in Xinjiang are Han.
Xinjiang, okay, got it. Okay. Xinjiang in the northwest was conquered. Xinjiang, okay. Xinjiang's here. Xinjiang becoming a country's biggest province. An area of rugged mountains and vast desert basins. Let's see here. Xinjiang. Yeah, I can see it here. Yeah, look at that. Basins. You can see the gaps here. Xinjiang is 642,820 square miles, twice the size of Texas. Or to put it another way, you could fit the UK, France, Germany, Austria, Switzerland, and the Netherlands and Belgium into it and still have room for Luxembourg and Liechtenstein. Let's see how that's. So it's kind of here. Yeah, it's huge. Look at that. Oh, that there. There we go. And it's like you could fit UK in there. You could fit how many UKs? About 3 or 4? My goodness. Goodness gracious me. Okay. But in adding to its size, China also added to its problems. Xinjiang, a region populated by Muslims, was a perennial source of instability, indeed insurrection, as were other regions, but for the Han, the buffer was worth the trouble, even more after the fate which befell the country in the 19th and 20th century with the coming of the Europeans. Hang on, let me see Xinjiang again. Hang on a sec.
In Xinjiang are Han.
Xinjiang,
There'll be
Muslims.
There may be a mayor of a city.
This far western Xinjiang region is one of the most tightly controlled areas in the entire country. It is officially called the Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region because 45% of its population are Uyghurs, a Muslim minority who identify themselves as culturally and ethnically close to the people of Central Asia. China's ruling Communist Party has governed all of Xinjiang since 1949. And in the decades since, activists say the government has introduced policies that have gradually eroded the Uyghurs' religious, commercial, and cultural activities. Uyghurs remain the dominant ethnicity in Xinjiang, but a large influx of Han Chinese, the country's largest ethnicity, has made Uyghurs the minority in major cities like Urumqi. While Beijing has invested...
Well, let me see where Urumqi is, sorry. Urumqi. Xinjiang. Urumqi. Okay. So it's kind of the north part of Xinjiang. Okay. Let's go back to the video.
Heavily into industry and energy projects, touting them as signs of progress, many Uyghurs say the Han Chinese are taking most of the jobs that are created. That has led to resentment and frustration that has broken out in violence more than once. In one of the worst incidents, nearly 200 people were killed in Urumqi in the summer of 2009. Dozens of others have been killed in bursts of violence in other parts of Xinjiang since. China blames Xinjiang separatists based outside the country for the unrest. It singled out exiled Uyghur leader Rebia Kadir, who has denied inciting violence. Several attacks in other parts of China have also been blamed on Xinjiang separatists that authorities allege have ties with extremist groups like Al-Qaeda. In January 2018, officials said the number of trained jihadist fighters caught trying to re-enter China from overseas rose tenfold from the year before. The Chinese government has put Xinjiang under virtual lockdown. Observers say authorities have set up more than 7,300 police monitoring stations, confiscated the passports of most Uyghurs, and some parts of the region have forbidden parents from giving their newborns Muslim names. In August 2017, all Xinjiang residents were ordered to download and install this mobile app that security experts say scans phones for digital fingerprints of illicit files and informs authorities when it finds them. Human rights groups have also presented evidence of political education camps that have been set up in Xinjiang. They say up to 1 million Uyghurs and other Muslim minorities have been sent to the camps where they're subjected to propaganda that promotes the Chinese identity. China denies an arbitrary detention policy and says the people at these vocational centers are guilty of minor offenses and are being taught skills to reintegrate them into society. The full extent of the government's crackdown in Xinjiang is unclear because access is highly restricted. But Chinese officials say all the measures they've taken are to fight extremism, ensure stability, and protect the whole country.
Yeah, trying to keep a grip on that with an iron grip of China. What's called iron grip in the region, though. Okay. The imperial powers arrived, the British among them, and carved the country up into spheres of influence. It was and is the greatest humiliation the Chinese suffered since the Mongol invasion. This is a narrative the Communist Party uses frequently. It is in part true, but it is also useful to cover up the party's own failures and repressive policies. Later, the Japanese, expanding their territory as an emerging world power, invaded, attacking first in 1932 and then again in 1937, after which they occupied most of the heartland as well as Manchuria and Indo Mongolia. Japan's unconditional surrender to the Americans at the end of the Second World War in 1945 led to the withdrawal of Japanese troops, although in Manchuria they were replaced by the advancing Soviet army, which then withdrew in 1946. I have the urge to bring this up. So Unit 731. It's pretty horrific what went on in there.
The universally despised Japanese Unit 731. Just how abhorrent were they? The Japanese soldiers tied a woman to the icy, snowy ground. Then they scooped up a ladle of ice-cold river water. No matter how much she begged for mercy, they unhesitatingly poured it on her arm. The woman instantly cried out in excruciating pain. Because she was tightly bound, there was absolutely no way for her to escape. Soon after, the cruel soldiers, right in front of her, viciously stomped the woman's child to death. This instantly filled her with utter despair. She struggled frantically, but it was all in vain. She could only watch helplessly as this scene unfolded. After being exposed to the cold wind for hours, ice had formed around the woman's arms. But the soldiers, seeing this, showed no concern. They again scooped up ladles of ice-cold river water, pouring it once more on the poor woman's arms. They repeated this dozens of times until her arms became as hard as bricks. Then the soldiers slowly approached her and without hesitation began their assault. Heart-wrenching screams echoed through the sky. Upon realizing the woman was still conscious, the soldiers once again poured water on her arms. Thankfully, those under protection wouldn't face such horrors. Soon after, they took her to a laboratory. They plunged her arms into boiling water. The woman was terrified at the sight of this. But before she could even catch her breath, the next moment, the soldiers forcefully pulled, separating her flesh from her bones on the spot. Although this was already incredibly cruel, it was merely an appetizer for Unit 731's atrocities. The universally despised...
Yeah, okay, yeah. This is kind of like quite a grim part of human history. it pretty much tells you just how deprived and how cruel people can be. I mean, the spirit of humanity can be very, very empowering and very, very, what's the word I'm looking for? It gives you hope. But when you see this callous and depraved acts that the Unit 731 carried out, and the guy Shiro was called Shiro Ishii, who's the founder of Unit 731, it was pretty much got away with it scot-free. So it's like the Japanese Mengele. What else can we look at?
Here are 5 things you didn't know about the most terrifying biological warfare program in history. First, Japanese Unit 731 dropped ceramic bombs filled with plague-infected fleas on Chinese cities, killing over 400,000 Taiwan civilians through biological warfare. They tested these weapons by forcing prisoners to stand in open fields while planes dropped plague bombs directly on them. Then they documented every stage of infection and death like a twisted science experiment. Second, they bred billions of fleas in massive underground facilities and infected them with bubonic plague, anthrax, and cholera. Third, they released plague-infected rats into entire villages.
I think this is where the Chimera disease came about, where they infect someone with 2 diseases. Usually the what's called the antidote or the cure counteract each other as well in many cases.
And studied how the disease spread through populations. Families died while scientists took notes from nearby hills. Fourth, after the war ended, the U.S. government secretly gave all Unit 731 scientists complete immunity from war crimes prosecution. Fifth, America traded justice for their biological weapons research data, which was then used in American bioweapons programs. The most evil experiments in history became the foundation for modern biological warfare. Don't forget to subscribe to Ghostfeed for more.
There's a lot to look into with Unit 731, the horrors of humanity. It's pretty dark history, and I don't know. You see those 2 extremes. What do they call it? The Overton window of what's called human spirit. It's very wide. Okay. A few outside observers thought the post-war years might bring liberal democracy to China. It was wishful thinking akin to the naive nonsense Westerners wrote during the early days of the recent Arab Spring. It's called the Arab Uprising anyway, which, as with China, was based on a lack of understanding of the internal dynamics of the people, politics and geography of the region. Yeah, I think that's part of the problem with, I wouldn't say it's just unique to America. I think it's to any sort of like empire, whether colonial or any as what's called imperial empires, that they go into regions looking to project their own worldview onto the new regions. The Muslims didn't seem to do that, as far as my reading of Muslim civilizations. The Umayyad went into what's it called Persia. They didn't really change the culture and the administration. They actually absorbed it. I think that was part of the enduring qualities of the Muslim civilization, is wherever they went, rather than completely dismissing what they entered into, they kind of say, okay, what are the merits, what are the utility of the aspects of this society, and incorporate that in. And it's only when they stopped doing that and became very, very insular, cocooned themselves from the other, that's where the demise happened. And this is all the more reason talking about the benefits of immigration into societies. Yeah, they talk about the net negatives, but they don't bring about the net positives of immigration as well. Anyway, the diversity is proof of the bounty of God, as I want to say it's a hadith narration. I think it's like an adage, more so to speak. Anyway, instead, nationalist forces under Chiang Kai-shek and communist armies under Mao Zedong battled for supremacy until 1949. When the communists emerged victorious and the nationalists withdrew to Taiwan. That same year, Radio Beijing announced the People's Liberation Army must liberate all Chinese territories, including Tibet, Xinjiang, Hainan, and Taiwan. Mao centralized power to an extent never seen in the previous dynasties. He blocked Russian influence in Inner Mongolia and extended Beijing's influence into Mongolia. Beijing's influence here into Mongolia. In 1951, China completed its annexation of Tibet, another vast non-Han territory below Xinjiang. And by then, Chinese school textbook maps were beginning to depict China as stretching even into Central Asian republics. The country has been put back together. Mao would spend the rest of his life ensuring it stayed that way and consolidating Communist Party control in every facet of life. But turning away from much of the outside world, the country remained desperately poor, especially away from the coastal areas, but unified. Mao's successor tried to turn his long march to victory into an economic march towards prosperity. In the early 1980s, the Chinese leader Deng Xiaoping, if I pronounce that wrong, then apologies from me, coined the term socialism with Chinese characteristics, which appeared to translate as total control for the Communist Party in a capitalist economy. China was becoming a major trading power and a rising military giant. By the end of the 1990s, he had recovered from the shock of the Tiananmen Square massacre in 1989, regained Hong Kong and Macau from the British and Portuguese respectively, and could look around its borders, assess its security, and plan ahead for its great move out into the world. If you look at China's, let me look at Macau. Is that how you pronounce it? Macau. Let me be extra certain. That's the wrong one. I don't want that one. That one. Pronunciation.
Six of them in Macau. That's it.
Yeah,
They ain't
that was right. Have some faith in yourself, Shah. Okay. If we look at China's modern borders, we see a great power now confident that it is secured by its geographical features, which lends themselves to effective defense and trade. In China, the points of the compass are always listed in the order east, south, west, north. Yeah, it's kind of going to be shying away from the north with Mongolia. It's got a freaking Great Wall of China all over it, covering all that. Let's get rid of that one. But let's start in the north and move clockwise. Yeah. In the north, we see this 2,906 mile long border with Mongolia. Oh, that is nearly 3,000 miles. Straddling this border is the Gobi Desert. We saw the Gobi Desert here. Where's the Gobi Desert? Somewhere here, the Gobi Desert. Let me have a look at this on video, the Gobi Desert.
The Gobi Desert, located in northern China and southern Mongolia. The Gobi Desert, located in northern China and southern Mongolia, is one of the harshest and most unforgiving places on Earth. Its vast expanse of arid land is characterized by extreme temperatures and scarce vegetation, making it a challenging environment for both humans and wildlife. Summer temps can hit scorching highs of 122 degrees Fahrenheit, and winter nights plunge to a bone-chilling 40 below zero. This place is no playground. The Gobi is a land of extremes. Harsh winds whip across the barren landscape, making it feel like nature's own sandblaster. Water? Forget about it. Rain is so scarce, it's like finding a needle in a haystack. And let's talk about the wildlife. Only the toughest survive here. Think camels that can go months without water, and hardy plants that thrive where nothing else can. But there's beauty in the brutality. The Gobi's vast, empty spaces hold secrets of ancient civilizations and fossils from millions of years ago. So would you dare to visit the Gobi Desert?
This is kind of fascinating me now. How big is the Gobi Desert actually? Top 10 amazing facts about the Gobi Desert. Let's look at
The
that.
Gobi Desert, located in northern China and southern Mongolia, is a vast and enigmatic landscape filled with unique features and natural wonders. First, it ranks as one of the world's largest deserts, covering over 1,295,000 square kilometers of arid terrain. Despite its reputation as a barren wasteland, the Gobi supports a surprising variety of flora and fauna, including rare species like the Bactrian camel and Gobi bear. Second, the Gobi Desert is renowned for its extreme temperature fluctuations, with scorching summers and frigid winters. Temperatures can range from over 40 degrees Celsius in summer to minus 40 degrees Celsius in winter. Third, the desert boasts an otherworldly landscape featuring vast sand dunes, rocky plateaus, and salt flats. The Kangarinel sand dunes, known as the Singing Dunes, are particularly famous for producing eerie, melodic sounds when the wind blows. Fourth, the Gobi Desert is home to numerous archaeological sites, including the Flaming Cliffs, where fossils of dinosaur eggs and skeletons were discovered by explorer Roy Chapman Andrews in the 1920s. Fifth, this desert was historically traversed by the Silk Road, an ancient trade route connecting China with Europe, making it a hub for cultural exchange. Sixth, the Gobi Desert is incredibly dry, receiving very little rainfall. In some areas, annual precipitation can be as low as 100.
Kind of that's a bit dry, this one, if I'm honest. Hang on a second.
The Gobi Desert. The route from the Gobi Desert to Mongolia is more hostile than the others, but it's also shorter. The Gobi Desert is known for its mountains, dunes, and extreme weather conditions, both cold and hot, not to mention the fact that it's populated by wolves, bears, and snow leopards. Mongolia is considered to be one of the best countries for North Korean escapees, as they usually just send them to South Korea without many bureaucratic problems. However, recently border control has become tighter, so it's an option that's being used less and less. The Gobi Desert. The route from the Gobi Desert to
We don't want to be sidetracked. Let's get back to reading what we're reading. Okay. Gobi Desert. Nomadic warriors from ancient times might have been able to attack south across it, but a modern army would be spotted amassing there weeks before it was ready to advance. And it would need incredibly long supply lines running across inhospitable terrains before it got into Inner Mongolia, part of China, and close to the heartland. There are few roads fit to move heavy armor, a few habitable areas. The Gobi Desert is a massive early warning system come defensive line. Any Chinese expansion northwards will come not via the military but from trade deals as China attempts to hoover up Mongolia's natural resources, primarily minerals. This will bring with it increased migration of Han into Mongolia. Next door to the east is China's border with Russia. Hang on a sec. Yeah. So you got Russia all here. So the borders this region there. Where's it gone? Which runs all the way to the Pacific Ocean, or at least the Sea of Japan subdivision of it. Above this is the mountainous Russian Far East. How mountainous? Here we go. The mountainous Russian Far East. So it's all here. A huge inhospitable territory with a tiny population. Below it is Manchuria. I keep hearing... Hang on a second. Let me be certain where exactly Manchuria is. It's a region. I thought it was like a district or something. So all that is Manchuria. Let me just double check. See, for goodness sake. So above North Korea. So why isn't Manchuria being like you scale out in Mongolia, Hebei, Shandong? It's not saying Manchuria. It should say all Manchuria. It's freaking weird, man. So all this is Manchuria. Okay. So I was kind of getting a bit lost there. The population of Manchuria is 100 million and growing. In contrast, the Russian Far East has fewer than 7 million people and no indication of population growth. Large-scale migration south to north can be expected, which will in turn give China more leverage in its relations with Russia. From a military perspective, the best place to cross would be near the Russian Pacific port of Vladivostok. Vladivostok. Hang on, let's go see what's Vladivostok. So they kind of go here and then go right around here. Okay. But there are few reasons and no current intention to do so. Indeed, the recent Western sanction against Russia due to the crisis in Ukraine have driven Russia into massive economic deals with China and on terms which help keep Russia afloat, but are favorable to the Chinese. Russia is the junior partner in this relationship. Below the Russian Far East along the coast are China's Yellow, East China and South China Sea. Yellow Sea, East China and South China Sea. So it's this part. Yellow Sea, China's Yellow, East China and South China Seas, which leads to the Pacific and Indian Oceans, have many good harbours and have always been used for trade, but across the waves lie several island-sized problems. One shaped like Japan, which we shall come to shortly. That's a tiny island, isn't it? It's freaking huge. Continuing clockwise, we see to the next land borders. Vietnam, Laos, Burma, and Vietnam. Vietnam is an irritation for China. Irritation for China. For centuries, the two have squabbled over territory, and unfortunately for both, this is the one area to the south which has a border an army can get across without too much trouble. Let's see why. Let's see if kind of the land Vietnam can, well, kind of get through easily. Which partially explains the 1,000-year domination and occupation of Vietnam by China from 111 before the Common Era to 938 of the Common Era, and their brief cross-border war of 1979. However, as China's military prowess grows, Vietnam will be less inclined to get drawn into a shooting match and will either cozy up even closer with the Americans for protection. That's kind of ironic, given the Vietnam War, or quietly begin shifting diplomatically to become friends with Beijing. That both countries are nominally ideologically communist has little to do with the state of the relationship. It is a shared geography that has defined relations. Viewed from Beijing, Vietnam is only a minor threat and a problem that can be managed. The border with Laos is hilly jungle terrain, difficult for traders to cross. Where's Laos? Yes, pretty much. Look at that mountainous region. Look at that. And even more complicated for the military as they move clockwise to Burma. The jungle hills become mountainous until the western extreme there. At the western extreme, they are approaching 20,000 feet and beginning to merge into the Himalayas. Go clockwise, and this is where you go way high. This brings us to Tibet and its importance to China. The Himalayas run the length of the Chinese-Indian border before descending to becoming the Khartoum Range bordering Pakistan. Okay. Here, can you see? Okay. Afghanistan and Tajikistan. This is nature's version of the Great Wall of China, or looking at it from New Delhi's side, the Great Wall of India. It cuts the two most populous countries on the planet off from each other, both militarily and economically. They have their disputes. China claims the Indian province of Arunachal Pradesh. India says China is occupying Aksai Chin. Okay, let's see Arunachal Pradesh. Okay, this is AR, Arunachal Pradesh, and the other one is Aksai Chin. See Aksai Chin again nearby. So that's Aksai Chin. So they're claiming that India goes all the way up here and they want that. And they're saying, okay, China wants this part of India and India wants this part of China. But despite pointing them artillery at each other, I'm going to see this in the context of the Lahore is there and okay. Where's Islamabad? Lahore is there, so it's kind of this part here. And they're also complaining about, I'm guessing, this part here. Okay. But despite pointing their artillery at each other high up on this natural wall, both sides have better things to do than reignite the shooting match which broke out in 1962, when a series of violent borders disputes culminated in vicious large-scale mountain fighting. Nevertheless, the tension is ever present and each side needs to handle the situation with care. Very little trade has moved between China and India over the centuries, and that is unlikely to change soon. Of course, the border is really the Tibetan-Indian border, and that is precisely why China has always wanted to control it. That's an interesting point. So on the one hand, they got the Muslims from Xinjiang, and then Tibet as well. This is a geopolitics of fear. If China did not control Tibet, it would always be possible that India might attempt to do so. This would give India the commanding heights of the Tibetan plateau and a base from which to push into Chinese heartland, as well as control of Tibetan sources of three of China's great rivers, the Yellow, Yangtze and Mekong. Okay, where's the Mekong River? It goes all the way from India down into... Okay, let's go in here. Okay. Which is why Tibet is known as China's water town. It goes all the way from here, all the way down there, all the way... Okay. China, a country with approximately the same volume of water usage as the USA, but with a population 5 times as large, will clearly not allow that. It matters not whether India wants... this is an interesting point. We need to look a little bit further into this. Why Tibet is such a hot topic, a kind of like a red line for China. So let's go here. Come here. Tibet. China's water tower. This is fantastic, the Caspian Report. But I need something a bit more brief.
This is why Tibet is more important than you might think. First, Tibet is home to hundreds of Chinese military bases, meaning that in case of war, China could easily send millions of troops into India. However, India won't be able to do the same because Tibet's mountainous terrain would protect the populated east of China. Secondly, the high peaks of Tibet are the birthplace of these rivers, giving China the ability to control the water of these countries. This is why Tibet is more important than you might think. First,
Tibet Water Tower of Asia.
At the top of the world stretches a vast, icy expanse known as the roof of the world.
I don't want that. I want kind of like diagrams to kind of give us an idea just how important Tibet is in terms of providing water for the region. The Qinghai Tibet Plateau.
This is Xinjiang in West China's Qinghai province, where the Yangtze, Yellow, and Lanchang rivers all originate. Located in the hinterlands of the Qinghai Tibet Plateau with an average elevation of nearly 5,000 meters, Xinjiang boasts abundant natural landscapes such as glaciers, lakes,
They're not going to use the
grasslands,
term Tibet, are
canyons,
they?
and forests, covering an area of 123,100 square kilometers. For thousands of years, rivers starting from here have nurtured the world's longest-standing
AI
and
before
most
AI.
comprehensive human civilization, which earned it the name the Water Tower of China. At the end of the last century, Xinjiang experienced an ecological crisis due to human activities such as over-reclamation and overgrazing, as well as the impact of global warming. The grassland in the Xinjiang region had suffered serious degradation and desertification. The glaciers, snow mountains, and wetlands had been shrinking, and the Yellow River even stopped flowing for a period of time. To keep this land pollution-free, China began to explore ways of ecological protection in light of the local conditions. Special ecological management posts have been set up in this area, and more than 20,000 local herdsmen have become ecological rangers, patrolling the ridges, grasslands, and forests, cleaning up garbage, monitoring ecology, and putting up ecology protection slogans to protect their hometown through their own efforts. Today, Xinjiang's ecosystem have been recovering. The percentage of grassland coverage...
It's kind of a Chinese propaganda there. Hang on a second.
The roof of the world, cold, remote, untouchable. But from these frozen peaks flow rivers that feed over 1 billion people. Tibet and the Himalayas are more than mountains. They are Asia's water tower and a source of tension as nations look upstream.
Okay. Tibet's quite a very, very precious asset, commodity to the whole region. Never knew that before. This is the whole point of reading all this geopolitical structures of the world, the geopolitics of the world. It matters not whether India wants to cut off China's river supply, only that it would have the power to do so. For centuries, China has tried to ensure that it could never happen. The actor Richard Gere and the Free Tibet movement will continue to speak out against the injustices of the occupation and now settlement of Tibet by Han Chinese, but in a battle between the Dalai Lama and the Tibetan independence movements, Hollywood stars, and the Chinese Communist Party, which rules the world's second largest economy, there is only going to be one winner. When Westerners, be they Mr. Gere or Mr. Obama, talk about Tibet, the Chinese find it deeply irritating. Not dangerous, not subversive, just irritating. They see it not through the prism of human rights, but that of geopolitical security. I can only believe that the Westerners are trying to undermine their security. However, Chinese security has not been undermined, and it will not be. even if there are further uprisings against the Han. Demographics and geopolitics oppose Tibetan independence. I think it's just the nature of like empires, is that they're projecting their own worldview onto a region to say that, well, this is the way that we see it. This is the point about looking at human rights. Even that is kind of been all broken down in recent times. No one in the West seems to care about human rights as much as they claim to. While China, they look at it at this point of a communist come materialistic or secular. Would you say Chinese are secular? Put that down in the comments. But this point about they have their own worldview to say that it's all about controlling the region and security. However, the Chinese security has not been undermined and will not be further pressed against the Han. Demographics and geopolitics oppose Tibetan independence. Okay. The Chinese are building facts on the grounds, on the roof of the world. In the 1950s, the Chinese Communist People's Army began building roads into Tibet, and since then they have helped to bring the modern world to an ancient kingdom. But the roads and now railways also bring the Han. It was long said to be impossible to build a railway through the permafrost, the mountains and the valley of Tibet. Europe's best engineers who had cut through the Alps said it could not be done. As late as 1988, the travel writer Paul Thoreau wrote in a book, Riding the Iron Rooster, the Kunlun Range is a guarantee that the railway will never get to Lhasa. The Kunlun separated Xinjiang province from Tibet, for which Thoreau gave thanks. That is probably a good thing. I thought I liked railways until I saw Tibet, and then I realized that I like wilderness much more. But the Chinese built it, perhaps only they could have done. The line into the Tibetan capital, Lhasa, was opened in 2006 by the then Chinese president, Hu Jintao. Now passengers and goods trains arrive from as far away as Shanghai and Beijing 4 times a day, every day. I need to see this. The red rooster, iron rooster. Is that the term he used to describe transportation? Tibet. This is Tibet. Never mind. Railway to Lhasa. Chingai's. Here we go. Need something a bit more brief.
Have you ever taken a train through the clouds? You're about to ride the world's highest and wait till you see where it leads. It cuts across frozen rivers, past wild yaks, and through landslides of snow. Built 5,000 meters high, where oxygen tanks are part of the ride. But the real shock? This train links an ancient Tibetan village to China's high-speed tech hubs, all in under 24 hours. And that's just the beginning. Have you ever...
You see this, and the world is a really beautiful place, and it's all the more reason people need to travel just to kind of see the world. I mean, you can just go online, but it's not the same thing. You've got to experience it. You've got to feel it. You've got to breathe it all in.
Adventurers, are you ready? Hop on the Tibet train for a soul-stirring journey like no other. More than just a railway connecting Lhasa to major cities, it's your key to paradise. Since 2006, this 1,900-kilometer marvel has conquered altitudes over 5,000 meters. Picture this. From the turquoise waters of Qinghai Laketo, the grandeur of Kunlun Mountains, from the wilds of Kekeksili, to the vast pastures of Changtang Plateau, every stop is a masterpiece of nature. Asia Odyssey Travel unlocks 20-plus train routes from Beijing, Shanghai, and more, straight to Tibet's wonders. Worried about budget? The Qinghai-Tibet Railway offers both affordability and comfort. Train fares rival flights, and with oxygen systems on board, altitude sickness is no worry. This isn't just a trip, it's a cultural immersion, sharing stories with locals and fellow travelers. Don't wait, get detailed guides, timetables, and route maps. Depart from Xining, Beijing, Shanghai, Guangzhou. Plan your dream Tibet adventure now.
I would like to see a travel video where someone is traveling through this. Also, mega project. It'd be quite good to watch that as well. Need to see some of this. Anyway, let's get back to reading. They bring with them many things such as consumer goods from across China, computers, color televisions, and mobile phones. They bring tourists who support the local economy. They bring modernity to an ancient and impoverished land, a huge improvement in living standards and healthcare, and they bring the potential to carry Tibetan goods out to the wider world. But they've also brought several million Han Chinese settlers. This author has it in for the Han Chinese. The true figures are hard to come by. The Free Tibet movement claims that in the wider cultural Tibetan region, Tibetans are now a minority. I mean, okay, that thing is something that needs to be a point of concern about maintaining the Tibetan sort of like autonomy, if you want to say that, Tibetan what's called hold of the region. You don't want to be diluting or kind of like, in a term, it could be ethnic cleansing, if you want to call it that. That's a very, very heavy term to use. But okay. But the Chinese government says that in the official Tibetan autonomous region, more than 90% of the people are Tibetan. Both sides are exaggerating, but the evidence suggests the government is the one with a greater degree of exaggeration. Its figures do not include Han migrants who are not registered as residents. But the casual observer can see the Han neighborhoods now dominate the Tibetan urban areas. Han Chinese in Tibet.
Ever wondered how did China...
What do Chinese people feel about?
Ever wondered how did China invade Tibet? Tibet was an independent region for centuries, but in the 13th century, the Mongols ruled Tibet and later integrated it into the Chinese Empire. However, when China's Qing dynasty collapsed in 1912, Tibet declared independence. In 1950, Communist China, led by Mao Zedong, invaded Tibet. After a brief fight, Tibet signed the 17-point agreement, accepting Chinese rule, but many say it was forced. In 1959, Tibetans rebelled, but China crushed the uprising. The Dalai Lama fled to India, where he still leads the Tibetan government in exile. Today, Tibet is an autonomous region under strict Chinese control. Many Tibetans still demand independence, but China calls it an inseparable part of the country. So, was Tibet's takeover legal or forced? Let me know what you think in the comments.
I like this lady. She's quite good.
When Mao won the Chinese Civil War in 1949, it didn't end. He also spent the next 2 years not only eliminating nationalist remnants, but also conquering Xinjiang and Tibet. Tibet had been autonomous since 1911, when the last dynasty had collapsed. And Mao decides that he is going to reconquer Tibet. Tibet's an interesting place. It contains, I think, about 40% of China's mineral resources. So there's a lot of money being made in Tibet for those with the capital to invest in big mines. If you look at this map, the Han Chinese, the preponderant group of China, they dominate as far west as the Chongqing Basin and Sichuan. China has put large armies into Tibet exactly twice. Once under the Qianlong Emperor in the late 18th century, and they didn't stay for very long. And then under Mao in 1950, and they have stayed forever and built roads so they could keep on sending more in. Between 1950 and 1957, China built a series of road systems through Tibet, And the western route there is the only one that provides year-round traffic. The problem with the other two is, well, check it out. They go through 14 or 15 mountain ranges. It means you go vertical up, vertical down, do that 14, 15 times. And then between monsoon rains and snow and mudslides, they're very difficult to maintain. And then the eastern one crosses the major roads, river systems of South Asia, so that's difficult. So only the western route is the really good one, and it's really important for the Chinese. If you want to conquer Tibet, you truly want that one. All right, so if you look at this, that western route provides not only the ability to control Tibet, but it also provides a pincer onto Xinjiang. If China wants to come in one way and the other way, it's a good way to get in. If you look on those two circles there, those are the disputed areas between China and India. The northern one is the Aksai Chin Plateau, which China has taken from India, and India still claims. And in the south is the Arunachal Pradesh, which India still owns, but China claims. So these are the areas that they're fighting over. But once China took Tibet, before there'd been a big buffer zone between China and India, right? There's all this Tibet, and no one could really get in there. Now China's built roads, so it can get into places where India cannot deploy troops until it gets into the road races with the Chinese. And so it reduces the buffer zone between China and India to these small Himalayan kingdoms of Nepal, Bhutan, and Sikkim. So it changes things. So that's pivotal decision number one, decide to conquer Tibet.
If you enjoyed this clip.
Yeah, she's really good, Sarah Payne. I kind of like binge watch a lot of her lectures and her interviews. Watch out for her, she's good. Okay, once the majority of the population of Manchuria in Mongolia and Xinjiang were ethnically Manchurian, Mongolian, and Uyghur. Now all three are majority Han Chinese or approaching the majority. So it will be with Tibet. This means that resentment of the Han will continue to manifest itself in writings such as that of 2008, when anti-Chinese Tibetan protesters in Lhasa burnt and looted Han properties. 21 people died and hundreds were injured. The authorities' crackdown will continue. The Free Tibet movement will continue. Monks will continue to set themselves on fire and bring the plight of the Tibetans to the world's attention. And the Han will keep on coming. China's massive population, mostly crammed into the heartland, is looking for ways to expand, just as the Americans looked west. So do the Chinese. And just as the Iron Horse brought the European settlers to the land of the Comanches and the Navajo, so the modern Iron Roosters are bringing the Han to the Tibetans. Finally, the clock hand moves round past the border with Pakistan, Tajikistan, and Kyrgyzstan, all mountainous. Let's see how mountainous. Look at that, all mountains, all that. Oh, you see that here? All here. Before reaching the border of Kazakhstan, which leads back round north to Mongolia. This is the ancient Silk Route. Let's have a look at a map for the Silk Route. Oh, hang on. Silk Route map. Let's have this here. Bookmark it. Okay, so that's the Silk Route. It's quite stunning when you think about this. The trade land bridges from the Middle Kingdom to the world. Theoretically, it is a weak spot in China's defense, a gap between the mountains and desert. But it is far from the heartland. The Kazakhs are in no position to threaten China, and Russia is several hundred miles distant. I'm just baffled. How was the Silk Road built?
Did you know that a single trade route changed the course of world history? Yes, we are talking about the legendary Silk Road. The Silk Road was instrumental in shaping the civilizations of India, China, Persia, Egypt, Arabia, and Rome. This vast network of trade routes stretched from Xi'an in China through Central Asia and reached the Mediterranean Sea. Although the route was named after its most valuable commodity, in antiquity, many other goods were traded along it, including spices, gold, medicine, and jewels. Beyond trade, it served as a conduit for ideas, philosophies, religions, and technological innovations like the compass, gunpowder, and printing, bridging the East and West. The route wasn't just about goods, it granted power and influence to the empire that controlled it. However, the rise of the Ottoman Empire in the 15th century led to the blockade of trade routes, ultimately leading to the Age of Exploration and the decline of the Silk Road. Fast forward to today, China is attempting to recreate the spirit of the Silk Road with its ambitious Belt and Road Initiative. Did you know that a single trade route...
We'll get to the Belt and Road Initiative in soon. Okay, so southeast of this Kazakh border is the restive semi-autonomous Chinese province of Xinjiang and its native Muslim population of the Uyghurs people who speak a language related to Turkish. Xinjiang's borders 8 countries. Russia, right there. Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Afghanistan, tiny bit here, Pakistan, and India. There was and is and always will be trouble in Xinjiang. The Uyghurs have twice declared an independent state of East Turkestan. In the 1930s and 1940s, they watched the collapse of the Russian Empire result in their former Soviet neighbors in the Uzbekistan, blah, blah, all that, becoming sovereign states, were inspired by the Tibetan independent movement, and many are now again calling to break away from China. Inter-ethnic rioting erupted in 2009, leading to over 200 deaths. Beijing responded in 3 ways. It ruthlessly suppressed dissent. It poured money into the region, and it continued to pour in Han Chinese workers. For China, Xinjiang is too strategically important to allow an independence movement to get off the ground. It is not only borders 8 countries, thus buffering the heartland, but it also has oil and is home to China's nuclear weapons testing sites. The territory is also key to the Chinese economic strategy of One Belt, One Road. The road is, oddly enough, a sea route, the creation of an ocean-going highway for goods. The belt is a Silk Road economic belt, a land-based route formed from the old Silk Route, which goes straight through Xinjiang and will in turn connect down southwards to the massive deep-sea port China is building in Gwadar, Pakistan. In late 2015, China signed a 40-year lease on the port. This is part of the way in which the Belt and Road will be connected. All right, let's go to the Belt and Road Initiative. Let's look for a short. I need to look for something short. I'm going to go for this one. It's a bit longer though.
There's a new highway in Pakistan. And a new rail terminal in Kazakhstan. A seaport in Sri Lanka recently opened, as well as this bridge in rural Laos. What's interesting is that they're all part of one country's project that spans 3 continents and touches over 60% of the world's population. If you connect the dots, it's not hard to see which country that is. This is China's Belt and Road Initiative, the most ambitious infrastructure project in modern history that's designed to reroute global trade. And it's how China plans to become the world's next superpower.
Kazakhstan.
It's 2013, and Chinese President Xi Jinping is giving a speech in Kazakhstan, where he mentions the ancient Silk Road. a network of trade routes that spread goods, ideas, and culture across Europe, the Middle East, and China as far back as 200 BC. He then says,
we should take an innovative approach and jointly build an economic belt along the Silk Road.
A month later, Xi is in Indonesia.
The two sides should work together to build up a new maritime road in the 21st century.
These two phrases were the first mentions of Xi.
1 minute, just got to answer this. All right, so let me just play this back again.
Xi's legacy project, the multi-trillion-dollar Belt and Road Initiative, or BRI. They're also the two components of the plan. There's an overland economic belt of 6 corridors that serve as new routes to get goods in and out of China, like this railroad connecting China to London, and these gas pipelines from the Caspian Sea to China, and a high-speed train network in Southeast Asia. Then there's the Maritime Silk Road, a chain of seaports stretching from the South China Sea to Africa that also directs trade to and from China. The BRI also includes oil refineries, industrial parks, power plants, mines, and fiber optic networks, all designed to make it easier for the world to trade with China. So far, over 60 countries have reportedly signed agreements for these projects. And the list is growing because China promotes it as a win-win for everyone. Take, for example, the BRI's flagship project, Pakistan. Like many countries in Central and South Asia, Pakistan has a stagnant economy and a corruption problem. It wasn't a popular place for foreign investment, that is until China came along. In 2001, China offered to build a brand new port in the small fishing town of Gwadar. By 2018, the port, as well as a highway and railway networks, became a $62 billion corridor within the BRI. It's where the economic belt meets the Maritime Silk Road, and it seemed to benefit both countries. Pakistan saw its highest...
You can see how that is really pissing off India, isn't it? It's like China, Pakistan go chummy. India's always trying to block China progressing down, but Pakistan's like rolling out the red carpet. Here, come, take, go. Okay.
GDP growth in 8 years and forged a tight relationship with a major world power. China, on the other hand, secured a new alternative route for goods, especially oil and gas from the Middle East. Through projects like these, it also found a way to boost its economy. Chinese construction companies that had fewer opportunities within their own country saw a huge boost from BRI contracts. 7 out of the 10 biggest construction firms in the world are now Chinese. What tips the balance in China's favor even more is a requirement that it be involved in building these projects. In Pakistan, for example, Chinese workers have directly built projects like this highway here, and a Chinese firm has worked with locals on a railway here in Serbia. China's involvement is one of its very few demands, and that's set these deals apart so far. See, typically, to get investment from the West, countries have to meet strict ethical standards. But China's offered billions of dollars, mostly in loans, with far fewer conditions. So it's no surprise the BRI has been a big hit with the less democratic countries in the region. China has signed agreements with authoritarian governments, military regimes, and some of the most corrupt countries in the world. It's even affiliated with Afghanistan, Ukraine, Yemen, and Iraq, all currently splintered by conflict. Because of China's willingness to loan money to unreliable countries, many experts have called the BRI a risky plan. Eventually, these countries will have to pay China back, but corruption and conflict make that payback unlikely. A recent report found that many of the countries indebted to China are very vulnerable, including 8 that are at high risk of being unable to pay. So why does China keep lending? Because there's more to the BRI than just economics. In Sri Lanka, China loaned about $1.5 billion for a new deepwater port. It was a key stop on the Maritime Silk Road. By 2017, it was clear Sri Lanka couldn't pay back the loan, so instead they gave China control of the port as part of a 99-year lease. China also controls the strategic port in Pakistan, where it has a 40-year lease. It's pushing for a similar agreement in Myanmar, and it just opened an actual Chinese naval base in Djibouti. These are all signs of what's been called the String of Pearls theory. It predicts that China is trying to establish a string of naval bases in the Indian Ocean that will allow it to station ships and guard shipping routes that move through the region. So while China's not getting its money back, it's still achieving some very important strategic goals. China's growing influence challenges the status of the US, which has been the world's lone superpower for the last several decades. But isolation is trending in the US, meaning that they are investing less and therefore losing influence around the world. The BRI is China's way of leveraging power to become a global leader. By building relationships and taking control of global trade, China's well on its way.
An interesting point to note is America's becoming more isolationist, and it looks from here that China is reaching out. But let's be quite honest, it's also being very, very isolationist. It's kind of like it's bulldozing, it's burgeoning its way across the world. And a textbook example, it's almost like it's the president is set in what's happening in Xinjiang and in Tibet. They say that it's not the case of any sort of like reciprocal sort of relationship. It'd be more the case that they'll come in and capture the regions. And they say on the surface, we're not doing it. We have very, very, what's it called, tolerant and very, very open outlook. But it's almost as though that where the Han Chinese, from this book, the Han Chinese goes, they kind of like infiltrate and overtake. Okay. Most of the new towns and cities springing up across Xinjiang are overwhelmingly populated by Han Chinese attracted by work in the new factories in which the central government invests. A classic example is the city of Shihezi, 85 miles northwest of the capital, Urumqi. Okay, let's bring the other map up. Urumqi. Oh, let's just go Shihezi. Shihezi. Let's close that. Shihezi. Urumqi is here. Where's it gone? Northwest of Urumqi. There's Urumqi, is just there. Of its population of 650,000, it is thought that at least 620,000 are Hans. Overall, Xinjiang is reckoned to be 40% Han, at a conservative estimate, and even Urumqi itself may now be majority Han, although official figures are difficult to obtain and not always reliable due to their political sensitivity. There is a World Uyghur Congress based in Germany and the East Turkestan Liberation Movement set up in Turkey. But Uyghur separatists lack a Dalai Lama type figure upon whom foreign media can fix, and the cause is almost unknown around the world. China tries to keep it that way, ensuring it stays on good terms. Well, not recently, everyone's pretty much become aware of the plight of the Uyghurs, with as many border countries as possible in order to prevent any organized independence movements from having supply lines or somewhere to which it could fall back. Beijing also paints separatists as Islamist terrorists. Al-Qaeda and other groups which have a foothold in places like Tajikistan are indeed attempting to forge links with the Uyghur separatists, but the movement is nationalist first, Islamic second. However, guns, bombs and knife attacks in the region against state and/or Han targets over the past few years do look as if they will continue and could escalate into a full-blown uprising. Let's kind of a bit of a recess and talk about the Uyghurs. Uyghur what can I say? Han I can't think of. I could go into it, but
找老婆就要找新疆的，新疆的女人会做饭，会收拾房子，会照顾人，啥活都会干。但是嘛，这些都不是重点，重点是啊，他们不但心地善良、温柔、孝顺，而且长得特别呆。
Yeah, she looks really happy, doesn't she?
抖音。 . 。 。 。 。 。 。 。 。 。 。 。 。 。 。 。 。 。 。 。 。 。 。 。 。 。 。 。 。 。 。 。 。 。 。 。 。 。 。 。 。 抖音。 . 。 。 。 。 。 。 。 。 。 。 . 。 The US State Department has said it's a mistake for the United Nations human rights chief to visit China amid concerns that the Chinese will not allow proper scrutiny of the state of human rights in the country. The visit is to include the western region of Xinjiang, where ethnic Uyghurs, most of them Muslims, have been unlawfully detained and mistreated. A huge collection of data, including images linked to China's mistreatment of Uyghurs and other minorities, has been handed to the BBC. Now, the information was hacked from police computers, and it includes evidence of a shoot-to-kill policy for anyone trying to escape. Our correspondent John Sudworth has the story.
These are the faces China never intended us to see from inside its system of mass incarceration in Xinjiang. The government has long denied it's running detention camps for Uyghurs, insisting instead they are vocational schools for willing students. The photos, almost 3,000 of them, show the reality of how whole swathes of Uyghur society have been swept up person by person. The oldest was 73 at the time of her detention, the youngest just 15. The Uyghurs, with their Turkic language, Islamic traditions and roots in a region with a history of separatism and violence, have long faced cycles of tightening government control. And with mounting criticism over the camps, the authorities have taken journalists on tours, showing them Uyghurs celebrating their culture and, they say, being guided away from extremism. But it's a narrative undermined by the tens of thousands of files passed to the BBC. One set of documents describe the guarding of this camp just outside the city of Kashgar, with armed police stationed at all the main buildings and with each watchtower guarded by two officers equipped with sniper rifles and machine guns. Inside, lessons are watched over by police, carrying shields, batons and handcuffs. And the documents describe the response to students who attempt to escape. If warning shots are ignored, the order's clear: shoot them dead.
Yes, this is classified internal government information.
The files, said to have been hacked from police computer servers in Xinjiang by a source whose identity remains unknown, were first passed to Dr. Adrian Zenz, a Xinjiang scholar who in turn shared them with the BBC.
You have police officers in heavy riot gear standing next to some of the men. Some of the men have their arms in a funny position, as if they were handcuffed. So this is really very powerful about the image material. And I was looking through these images on my laptop in the living room. I had to get up and go somewhere else and take a break. I was overwhelmed.
The hacked files also contain hundreds of spreadsheets, row upon row of draconian jail sentences, often targeting expressions of Islamic faith, as a parallel method alongside the camps for detaining Uyghurs en masse. Just for growing a beard, Tursun Kadir was sentenced to 16 years in jail, his chosen expression of Uyghur identity forcibly removed. Many others have been jailed for listening to illegal religious lectures, including Tursun Memtimin and Ashigul Turgan. The documents don't say whether their daughters have been sent, like so many others, to the state-run boarding schools built alongside the camps. The data can be verified, shown to contain real people. Abdurrahman Hassan has not seen his wife and children since he left Xinjiang in 2017, yet a search of the hacked files found this. A photo of his wife, sentenced, the documents say, to 16 years in prison for a vague offence that appears time and again, gathering a crowd to disturb the social order. You can see how her spirit is broken, he tells me. Mahmoud Toti knew his eldest son had been jailed, but the database tells him for how long? 15 years. For terrorism offences, although as evidence, only his son's devout Islamic faith is listed. The Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman Wang Wenbin responded to our reporting, describing it as simply the latest anti-China falsehood and an attempt to smear China with rumours and lies. Xinjiang is stable, prosperous, and the people have happy lives, he said. But there's been no attempt to address the evidence itself, which includes these images from deep within the system. Further evidence of the harsh detention and indoctrination of a people, not for what they've done, but for who they are. John Sudworth, BBC News.
I could go on and on looking at this quite disturbing element in China's geopolitical ambitions, but let's proceed. Okay. In early 2016, the local government officials said that the de-radicalization efforts had markedly weakened the nascent Islamist movement. Nascent means like growing or budding, you could say. However, given that the Turkish army said it had arrested 324 suspected jihadists from Xinjiang en route to Syria in 2015, that seemed unlikely. China will not cede this territory, and as in Tibet, the window for independence is closing. Both are buffer zones. One is a major land trade route, and crucially both offer markets, albeit with a limited income, for an economy which must keep producing and selling goods if it is to continue to grow and to prevent mass unemployment. Failure to do so, failure to do so. I know it's failure to so do, but it's to do so. Failure to do so would likely lead to widespread civil disorder, threatening the control of the Communist Party and the unity of China. There are similar reasons for the party's resistance to democracy and individual rights. If the population were to be given a free vote, the unity of the Han might begin to crack, or more likely, the countryside and urban areas would come into conflict. That in turn would embolden the people of the buffer zones, further weakening China. It is only a century since the most recent humiliation of the rape of China by foreign powers. For Beijing, unity and economic progress are priorities well ahead of democratic principles. The Chinese look at society very differently from the West. That's the main point, is that everyone's looking at it from a very they call it ethnocentric, but what's the term you could say from a cultural centric point of view? Western thought is infused with the rights of the individuals. Chinese thought prizes the collective above the individual. What the West thinks of as the right of man, the Chinese leadership thinks of as a dangerous theory endangering the majority. And much of the population accepts that. At the least, the extended family comes before the individual. I once took a Chinese ambassador to London to the high-end French restaurant in the hope they would repeat Prime Minister Zhu Enlai's much-quoted answer to Richard Nixon's questions. What is the impact of the French Revolution? To which the Prime Minister replied, "It's too soon to tell." Sadly, this was not forthcoming, but I was treated to a stern lecture about how the full imposition of what you call human rights in China would lead to widespread violence and death, and was then asked, "Why do you think your values would work in a culture you don't understand?" I think that's the main point much of the world says to America, is that why are you always insisting on importing democracy and Pax Americana to our nations, even though many seem to be internalizing a lot of this soft power of America. It becomes a lot more difficult to digest if you're going to force it upon us. On them. You could say on us in the UK as well. Anyway, the deal between the party leaders and the people has been for a generation now. We'll make you better off. You will follow our orders. So long as the economy keeps growing, that grand bargain may last. If it stops, it goes into reverse. The deal is off. The current level of demonstrations and anger against corruption and inefficiency are testament to what would happen if the deal breaks. Another growing problem for the party is its ability to feed the population. More than 40% of arable land is now either polluted or has thinning topsoil, according to the Ministry of Agriculture. China is caught in a catch-22. It needs to keep industrializing as it modernizes and raises standards of living, but that very process threatens food production. If it cannot solve this problem, there will be unrest. There is now around 500 mostly peaceful protests a day across China over a variety of issues. If you introduce mass unemployment or mass hunger, that tally will explode in both number and the degree of force used by both sides. Yeah, I think this is kind of like a sleeping sort of like giant embedded within the subculture in China. It's like Han's Chinese are going everywhere, but you got the local natives staying quiet. But it's only so much they could actually take. Never underestimate the indigenous people's right to their own identity, already. But I think that's probably my Western projection onto this society, this region, anyway. So on the economic side, China now also has a grand bargain with the world. We'll make stuff cheap we'll make the stuff for cheap. You buy it for cheap. Leave to one side the fact that already labor costs are rising in China and it is being rivaled by Thailand and Indonesia for price, if not volume. What would happen if the resources required to make the stuff dried up? If someone else got them first, or if there was a naval blockade of your goods, like in the Strait of Hormuz, in and out? Well, for that, you need a navy. The Chinese were great sea voyagers, especially in the 15th century, and they roamed the Indian Ocean. Admiral Zheng He expedition ventured as far as Kenya. But these were money-making exercises, not power projections. And they were not designed to create forward bases that could be used to support military operations. Having spent 4,000 turbulent years consolidating its landmass, China is now building a blue water navy. A green water navy patrols its maritime borders. A blue water navy patrols the oceans. It will take another 30 years, assuming economic progression, for China to build naval capacity to serious challenge the most powerful seaborne force the world has ever seen, the US Navy. But in the medium to short term, as it builds and trains and learns, the Chinese Navy will bump up against its rivals in the sea. And how those bumps are managed, especially the Sino-American one, will define great power politics of this century. Let me look at green water navy and blue water navy quickly in the context of China.
Ukrainian sea attack drones targeting and sinking a Russian landing craft. It's an example.
Hang on a sec, China. I could use Ukraine as an example, but I'll just stick to the topic.
Blue Water Navy, Green Water Navy, and Brown Water Navy are categorized into three groups to understand naval capabilities. A Blue Water Navy can operate in any part of the world, with the US Navy being the strongest, followed by India, Russia, China, the UK, and France. A Green Water Navy does not have global reach like a Blue Water Navy but can operate in coastal waters. Countries like Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, Israel, Singapore, and Pakistan have green water navies. A brown water navy operates only in rivers and shallow coastal waters, with countries like the Philippines, Cambodia, and Cyprus maintaining such forces. Thank you for your valuable time.
Okay, assuming economic progression for China to build naval capacity, blah, 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 blah. But in the medium to short term, I think I read it wrong, haven't I? The Sino-American one will define great power politics in this century. The young seamen now training on the second-hand aircraft carrier China salvaged from the Ukrainian rust yard will be the ones who, if they make it to the rank of admiral, may have learnt enough to know how to make a 12-ship carrier group across the world and back, and if necessary fight a war along the way. As some of the richer Arab nations came to realize you cannot buy an efficient military off the shelf. A Chinese-built aircraft carrier is now nearing completion, and in early 2016 China announced plans for a third to be ready by late 2021. It is doubtful if it will be nuclear-powered, and it will lack the capabilities of US carriers. Nevertheless, it will give China more reach and more options. Gradually, the Chinese will put more and more vessels into the sea off their coasts and into the Pacific. Each time one is launched, there will be less space for the Americans in the China seas. The Americans know this and know the Chinese are working towards a land-based anti-ship missile system to double the reason why the US Navy or any of its allies might one day want to think hard about sailing through the South China Sea, or indeed any other China Sea. China's increasingly long-distance shorter ship artillery firepower will allow its growing navy to venture further from its coastline because the navy will become less vital for defense. There was a hint of this in September 2015 when the Chinese lawfully sailed 5 vessels through the American territorial waters off the coast of Alaska. That this took place just before President Xi's visit to the United States was not a coincidence. The Bering Straits, okay, this is the Bering Straits, right here, okay. The Bering Straits is the quickest way for Chinese vessels to reach the Arctic Oceans, and we will see more of them off the Alaskan coast in the coming years. And all the while, the developing Chinese space project will be watching every move the Americans make and those of its allies. So having gone clockwise around the land borders, we now look east, south and southwest towards the sea. So, okay, east, south and southwest towards the sea. Okay. Between China and the Pacific is the archipelago. That's like a group of islands, isn't it? Let me just double check that. Archipelago. How do you pronounce it? Is it archipelago? A collection of islands, right? Let me just make that archipelago pronunciation.
To one another. How do you go about pronouncing it? Archipelago. Do not say archipelago, but rather archipelago.
Is it archipelago?
We're looking at how to pronounce this word in an American accent.
Just
correctly.
say it.
It is written as A-R-C-H-I-P-E-L-A-G-O.
Archipelago.
The correct pronunciation of this word is archipelago.
Flipping halfway through the video, just tell us. Archipelago.
We are looking at how to pronounce this word correctly. The correct pronunciation of this word is archipelago.
Okay, if you Americans say so. Between China and the Pacific is the archipelago that Beijing calls the first island chain. Okay. Oh, get lost. Why is this here? Go. All right. Let's delete that. There we go. All right. There is also the first island chain. Let's see the first island chain. It won't pop up, I think. China. Nah. I was being too ambitious there. Too hopeful. Got it. Okay. The first island chain is a strategic US-anchored maritime arc running from Kuril Island through Japan, Taiwan, Philippines and Borneo. Okay. First island chain is from... okay. So it goes all the way down here. Okay. There's also the 9-dash line. Okay, what's the 9-dash line? Okay, let's say the first island chain. Let me just zoom in case you want to have a closer look. Okay. The first island chain's Japan, Taiwan, goes all the way here. Second island chain. So what's this 9-dash line? The 9-dash line is a demarcation used by China to claim roughly 90% of South China Sea. The 9-dash line, okay. 1, 2, 3, goes all the way here. So it goes within like a... what do you call it? Cul-de-sac. Oh, it's not cul-de-sac, but it's kind of a little lump, you could call it, in there. So it goes right in there, okay. More recently, there's also the 9-dash line, more recently turned into 10-dash line. 10 dashes in 2013 to include Taiwan, which China says marks its territory. This dispute over ownership of more than 200 tiny islands and reefs is poisoning China's relations with its neighbors. It's gonna inevitably blow up. It's like it's going every other region with no regard for the native culture, traditions, language, people. It's just gonna blow up in their faces. National pride means China wants to control the passageway through the chain. Geopolitics dictates it has to. It provides access to the world's most important shipping lanes in the South China Sea. In peacetime, the route is open to various places, but in war times, they could very easily be blocked, thus blockading China. All great nations spend peacetime preparing for the day war breaks out, the 10-dash lines. The South China Sea is a hotly contested area between China and its neighbors, leading to disputes over ownership of islands, natural resources, and control of the sea and shipping lanes. Free access to the Pacific is firstly hindered by Japan. Yep. Chinese vessels emerging from the Yellow Sea. Okay, from here. Where's it going? From the Yellow Sea and rounding the Korean Peninsula would have to go through the Sea of Japan here and up through Le Perouse Straits. Where's the Le Perouse Straits? Yeah, it'll come up soon somewhere. Okay. The Le Perouse Straits. Okay. So this goes through here. Above Hokkaido. Where's Hokkaido? Hokkaido. That sounds like a really interesting place. I want to look into Hokkaido a bit. I'm sorry if it's going to be...
In the 7th century, Japan's territory included only
I
two...
want to see the people. Sapporo is in Hokkaido, isn't it? Sapporo, it looks like it's the capital. Yeah, okay. Let's see what Sapporo is about. It's not really looking at that.
Why everyone's obsessed with Sapporo, Japan. 1. Here, winter isn't cold, it's cinematic. Ice castles, steaming hot springs, and beer festivals in the snow. It's like living inside a snow globe that serves ramen. 2. Speaking of ramen, butter miso ramen. 1 bite and your soul signs a lease to stay. Add a king crab the size of your face, and a cold Sapporo beer born right here, perfection. 3. Summer, no sweat, literally. While Tokyo melts, Sapporo chills. Cool air, mountain views, and beer gardens under the stars. 4. And the people, calm, kind, quietly confident. Nobody's rushing, nobody's faking. Just real, peaceful Japan. So yeah, Sapporo isn't just a city. It's the Japan you fall in love with after you think you've seen it all. Why everyone's obsessed with Sapporo, Japan.
That's a place I would definitely want to go to. God willing, inshallah. I'll check it. I want to go there.
Why is Hokkaido basically empty? If you don't want to watch the full video, here's the short answer. It's cold. Now, let's get started.
Okay, that kind of defeats the whole argument in the last video. Let's go reading. Okay, Lepero Strait above Hokkaido and into the Pacific. Much of this is Japanese or Russian territorial waters and at a time of great tension. Yeah, I don't think China's going to kind of butt heads with Russia or Japan. It would be or even hostilities would be inaccessible to China. Even if they made it, they would still have to navigate through the Kuril Islands northeast of Hokkaido, which are controlled by Russia but claimed by Japan. The Kuril Islands are here. Okay, these are all the Kuril Islands. Yeah. Japan is also in dispute with China over the uninhabited island chain it calls Senkaku, and the Chinese know as Diaoyu, northeast of Taiwan. Okay, where's Taiwan? Taiwan is here. Okay. What's it called? Senkaku. Let's just call it Senkaku. Senkaku Bay. Okay, that's okay. All right. All right. Okay. This is the most contentious of all territorial claims between the two countries. If it said Chinese ships pass through or indeed set off from the East China Sea of Shanghai and go into the straight line towards the Pacific, they must pass the Ryukyu Islands, which includes Okinawa. Okay, what am I doing? The Okinawa's down here. Where's Okinawa? Where's it gone? Where's it go? Hang on a sec. Let me type. Okay, there we go. Upon which there is not only a huge American military base, but as many shore-to-ship missiles as the Japanese can pile up at the tip of the island. The message from Tokyo is clear. Hang on a sec. The message from Tokyo is clear. We know you're going out there, but don't mess with us on the way out. Let's have a look at some videos about that. Okinawa American military.
Issues involving the presence of U.S. military bases in Okinawa Prefecture linger on 50 years after its reversion from U.S. rule to Japan. The southwestern Japanese prefecture experienced ground battle during World War II and was under U.S. military rule for 27 years thereafter. On May 15, 1972, Okinawa was reverted to Japan.
Oh, it's a bit dreary the way she's explaining it, but hang on a sec. I don't want to go into too much details, but
We have a lot of angry residents in Japan's Okinawa right now because Japan's government and the Prime Minister Hatayama has agreed to leave that U.S. air base in Okinawa in spite of these local protests. Now, Mike Fern joins us from Tokyo with more details. And wasn't this part of his election manifesto to take the base off the island?
It was, but the Prime Minister, Yukio Hatayama, now saying security threats in the region, particularly from North Korea, mean that he's got no choice but to leave Futenma in Okinawa. The government has been arguing with the Obama administration about the location of this base since it came to power in September. Locals say the base is noisy and dangerous. One of the helicopters crashed into a nearby campus. Relocation on the island, they say, would harm the environment, particularly a marine park with endangered dugong. And they also point to the number of rapes, robberies.
Yeah, I'm gonna sec.
We have a lot of angry residents.
Shipped has helped strengthen America's argument for keeping troops in the region. Hatayama's decision on the base came 2 days after a meeting with U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. Now, the base will move to the coastal area of Henoko, which is the site originally agreed by a previous government, the Liberal Democratic.
It's the world's largest Navy base. There's over 100,000 people that work on one of the several campuses here. And now that's, civilians, reservists, active duty. But then when you also extrapolate it to adding in our families, in this community of 400,000 to 500,000 people, you're talking over 100,000.
Makes you wonder, why has it got such a huge, well-populated, well-run, well-funded base anyway? Okay. Another potential flare-up with Japan centers on the East China Sea's gas deposits. Beijing has declared an air defense identification zone over most of the sea, requiring prior notice before anyone else flies through it. The Americans and Japanese are trying to ignore it, but it will become a hot issue at a time of their choosing or due to an accident which is mismanaged. Below Okinawa is Taiwan, which sits off the Chinese coast and separates the East China Sea from the South China Sea. You can see here, pun intended. And turn this off. China claims Taiwan as a 23rd province, but it is currently an American ally with a navy and air force armed to the teeth by Washington. It came under Chinese control in the 17th century, but has only been ruled by China for 5 years in the last century, from 1945 to 1949. Taiwan's official name is the Republic of China, ROC, to differentiate from the People's Republic of China. Although both sides believe they should have jurisdictions over both territories, this is a name Beijing can live with, as it does not state that Taiwan is a separate state. The Americans are committed to defending Taiwan in the event of a Chinese invasion under the Taiwan Relations Act of 1979. However, if Taiwan declares full independence from China, which China would consider an act of war, the USA is not bound to come to its rescue, as the declaration would be considered provocative. Let me look into this a bit. America's interest, Taiwan. Let me just... It's a bit long.
Chinese soldiers preparing for battle. This is what Beijing wants to show the world. With each military...
Yeah, it's a bit long. I don't want to be spending too much time looking into this. I'd love to, but let's be aware.
Americans need to have a serious conversation about what Taiwan means to the United States. Because because we're dealing with an issue here that could end up in war with a nuclear power. And if you're going to go to war with the Chinese over this issue, it had better be a vital interest of the United States, critical to U.S. security and well-being. It does not meet that bar. Taiwan is a war or peace issue for the Chinese. Taiwan is a vital interest for the Chinese government. It is an issue over which they will go to war. By all best estimates, a really major destructive war, a magnitude of destruction in life and property and in disruption of the international system that goes beyond anything that we've really seen since World War II. Up to $10 trillion, 10% of global GDP could be wiped away. You could have deaths in the many thousands on both sides. There could be a loss of many thousands of lives on the American side, at least, in just a period of 2 to 3 weeks. These are arguments about why Taiwan is a vital interest for the United States. All three of these arguments are, in my view, inadequate. The first one is a strategic argument. It's a critical strategic location, the loss of which would put the United States at a huge disadvantage in Asia and would allow China to dominate the region and thereby eventually possibly dominate the United States, kind of like a domino effect. Second argument is American credibility. Confidence that allies have in the United States coming to their defense if they were under threat. The third argument is a morality argument. Taiwan is a longtime democratic friend of the United States, and we have a moral obligation to defend the security and safety of Taiwan as that democratic friend. Taiwan is not a vital U.S. interest for the United States. Japan, South Korea, they have been, since World War II, regarded as very important strategic locations for the United States. We have formal security treaties with Japan and South Korea. We do not have any security treaty with Taiwan. Both countries want the United States to keep peace across the Taiwan Strait.
1 second, where's the Taiwan Strait? There's a Taiwan Strait. Huh? Yeah, there's Taiwan Strait. So that's region across here. Let me just delete that. There's a Taiwan Strait. Oh, sorry, it was there, wasn't it? But this bit's a Taiwan Strait. Lost my train of thought. It's quite late as well, though. But
Yes, but they don't want the United States to provoke China. Countries want the United States to keep peace.
yeah, this is the point. If we were quite honest, Japan and South Korea are really vassal states of America. They're not really independent states. Let's be quite honest about that. Let's pose this question to ChatGPT. Are Japan and South Korea American vassal states? Countries. U.S. alliance with Japan and South Korea. Since the Second World War, Japan has been a close ally of the U.S. under the U.S.-Japanese security treaties. The U.S. maintained military base in Japan, and Japan post-war constitutes limits its military to self-defense. This has made Japan highly reliant on the U.S. for security, especially against threats like North and South and North Korea and China. But do we have any Japanese military base in the U.S.? I don't think so. If you can prove otherwise, please leave a comment down below. South Korea has hosted US troops since the Korean War and has a mutual defense treaty with the US Security Corporation is extensive, including joint military exercise and intelligence sharing. Degree of autonomy. So why some call them vassal states? Critics of the US foreign policy sometimes call them vassals because their security and defense policies are heavily US dependent. Others argue this is overstated, pointing out that Japan and South Korea have significant economic power. Yeah, but even the US funds all that. I mean, Samsung is pretty much like flooded with US money, as far as I've read. Hang on. Samsung subsidized by USA. Yes, the US government is subsidizing Samsung Electronics through the Chips and Science Act, awarding up to $4.745 billion in direct funding. This financial support is designed to boost US-based semiconductor productions, aiding a more than $37 billion investment for new chip facilities in Taylor, Texas, and expand. See? Anyway, let's continue reading. Otherwise, I'll be here for 10 hours. The two governments vie for recognition for themselves and non-recognitions of the other in every single country in the world. In most cases, Beijing wins. When you can offer a potential market of 1.4 billion people as opposed to 23 million. Most countries don't need long to consider. However, there are 22 countries, mostly developing states such as Swaziland, Burkina Faso, and the islands of Sao Tome and Principe, which opt for Taiwan and which are usually handsomely rewarded. Okay. The Chinese are determined to have Taiwan but are nowhere near being able to challenge for it militarily. Instead, they are using soft power by increasing trade and tourism between the two states. China wants to woo Taiwan back into its arms. During the 2014 student protests in Hong Kong, one of the reasons the authorities did not quickly batter them off the streets, as they would have done in, for example, Urumqi, was that the world's cameras was there and would have captured the violence. I think this is where the landlocked nations, districts are hard to access. This is pretty much easy to access, isn't it? Was that the world's camera? In China, much of this footage would be blocked, but in Taiwan, people would see what the rest of the world saw and ask themselves how close a relationship they wanted with such a power. Beijing hesitated. It's playing the long game. The soft power approach is to persuade the people of Taiwan that they have nothing to fear in rejoining the motherland. Yeah, they're going to say, well, look at Xinjiang and Tibet. Look what you're doing there. The Air Defense Identification Zone, the surfacing near US ships, and the buildup of the Navy are part of a long-term plan to weaken American resolve to defend the islands 140 miles off the coast of mainland China, but 6,400 miles from the west coast of the USA. Let's put this into context. Taiwan, here. China, here. America, all the way here. Okay, from the South China Sea, Chinese ships would still have problems, whether they're headed towards the Pacific or the Indian Oceans, which is the world waterway for the gas and oil without which China would collapse. To go westward towards the energy-producing state of the Gulf, they must pass Vietnam, which, as we have noted, has recently been making overtures to the Americans. They must go near the Philippines, a US ally, before trying to get through the Strait of Malacca, which is here. The Strait of Malacca is here. Malacca Strait. The strait is approximately 500 miles wide, long, and at its narrowest is less than 2 miles wide. It has always been a choke point, and the Chinese remain vulnerable to being choked. All of the states belong to the straits, and near its approaches are anxious about Chinese dominance, and most have territorial disputes with Beijing. So if you look at the maritime route, look at that over here, the Strait of Malacca. So much activity goes on here. Look how many tankers there are. All this crazy. China claims the entire South China Sea and the energy supplies believed to be beneath it as its own. However, where's the South China Sea? Malaysia, Taiwan, Vietnam, and the Philippines and Brunei also have territorial claims against China and each other. For example, the Philippines and China argue bitterly over the Mischief Islands. I was reading about the Mischief Islands a bit. Yeah, the Spratly Islands. We go to the Spratly Islands as well. Mischief Islands, a large reef in the Spratly Islands in the South China Sea. So it's this part. Every one of the 100 of disputes atoll, and sometimes just rocks poking out of the water, could be turned into a diplomatic crisis, as surrounding each rock is a potential dispute about fishing zones, exploration rights and sovereignty. To further its aims, China is using dredging and land reclamation methods to begin turning a series of reefs and atolls in disputed territories into islands. For example, one of the Spratly Islands, whose name Fiery Cross Reef aptly described it. Here's a Spratly Island. I think that's what the reef we're talking about. Anyway. Is now an island complete with a port and runway that could host fighter jets, giving China far more control of the skies of the regions than it currently has. Another reef has had artillery units stationed on it. Let's call it Fiery Cross Reef. Speaking in the summer of 2015, US Defense Secretary Ash Carter said, "Turning an underwater rock into an airfield simply does not afford the right of sovereignty or permit restrictions on international airs or maritime transit." This was shortly after China announced it was switching its military posture in the region from defense to both offense and defense. The move underlines China's intention to be the rule marker of the region, and for that, it will both court and threaten its neighbours. China must secure the route through the South China Sea, both for its goods to get to market and for the items required to make those goods, oil, gas and precious metals among them, to get into China. It cannot afford to be blockaded. Diplomacy is one solution. The ever-growing navy is another. But the best guarantees are pipelines, roads and ports. There we go, pipelines. Diplomatically, China will attempt to pull the Southeast Asian nations away from the US using both carrot and stick. Too much stick, and the countries will tie themselves even closer into defense treaties with Washington. Too much carrot, and they may not bend to Beijing's will. At the moment, they still look across the Pacific for protection. So China seems to be giving too much stick. Kind of like, hey, wait. Okay. So that'll piss off. And that's where the ASEAN countries come in. ASEANs, let me just bring what ASEANs are. ASEAN, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, is a regional intergovernmental organization established in 1976 to promote economic growth, social progress, and regional stability. It comprises of 10 member states: Brunei, Cambodia, Indonesia, Laos, Malaysia, Myanmar, Philippines, Singapore, Thailand, and Vietnam, with Timor-Leste in accession. It's the world's 5th largest economy. So you see all that there. Right. The map of the region that the Chinese now print show almost the whole of the South China Sea as theirs. This is a statement of intent backed by aggressive naval patrols and official statements. I want to say something quite controversial where they talk about the Israeli flag. Some people argue that they say that the Star of David is between two blue lines from the river to the sea. But apologists for the flag say that, well, it's not the river to the sea. It's supposed to be like the Jewish shoal, the lines of the Jewish shoal. But come on, who are you trying to kid? Okay. The maps of the region that Chinese now show, blah, 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 blah. This is a statement of intent backed by aggressive naval patrols and official statements. Beijing intends to change its neighbors' ways of thinking and to change America's way of thinking and behaving, pushing an agenda until its competitors back off. At stake here is the concept of international waters and free passage in peacetime. It is not something which will easily be given up by other powers. The geopolitical writer Robert Kaplan expounds a theory that the South China Sea is to the Chinese what the 21st century was. In the 21st century, what the Caribbean was to the USA at the beginning of the 20th century. The Americans, having consolidated their landmass, had become a two-ocean power, Atlantic and Pacific. The Atlantic and Pacific. And then moved to control the seas around them, pushing the Spanish out of Cuba. Cuba. They still speak Spanish down there. Okay. China also intends to become a two-ocean power, Pacific and Indian. To achieve this, China is investing in deep water ports in Burma. So there's India, and they want to control that. And this. Investing in deep water ports in Burma, Bangladesh, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka. An investment which buys its good relations, and potential for its future navy to have friendly bases to visit or reside in and trade links back home. The Indian Ocean and Bay of Bengal ports are part of an even bigger plan to secure China's future. The Bay of Bengal here. So, Bay of Bengal and Indian Ocean. Its lease on the new deepwater port in Gwadar, Pakistan. Where's Gwadar? Gwadar, Pakistan, on the borders of Afghanistan. Well, not Afghanistan, Iran, sorry. Will be key if the Pakistan region of Balochistan is stable enough. There's Balochistan. Where's Balochistan? It's this part here. To create an alternative land route up to China. Let me type it. Let me just double check. I don't want to get anything wrong. I don't want people to start saying, "You're wrong!" Balochistan. Here. See that? Right here. That's Balochistan. To create an alternative land route up to China. From Burma's west coastline, China has built natural gas and oil pipelines linking the Bay of Bengal up into southwest China. Let's look at pipeline maps. There we go. All these pipelines everywhere. Oil, gas. Mostly it's gas, isn't it? China's way of reducing its nervous reliance on the Strait of Malacca, through which almost 80% of its energy supplies pass. This partially explains why, when the Burmese junta began to slowly open up to the outside world in 2010, it wasn't just the Chinese who beat a path to their door. The Americans and the Japanese were quick to establish better relations with both President Obama and Prime Minister Abe of Japan, going to pay their respects in person. If they can influence Burma, they can help check China. Get this out of the way. So far, the Chinese are winning this particular game on the global chessboard, but the Americans may be able to outmuscle them as long as the Burmese government is confident Washington will stand by it. The Chinese are also building ports in Kenya, railway lines in Angola, and a hydroelectric dam in Ethiopia. Okay. It's opening in Kenya, Angola. Where's Angola? Angola's here. So it's building it here, and what was the other one? We said Ethiopia, here. They are scouring the length and breadth of the whole of Africa for minerals and precious metals. Chinese companies and workers are spread out across the world. Slowly, China's military will follow. With great power comes great responsibility. I wonder who said that. Sounds like a creepy guy. Yeah, okay. China will not leave the sea lanes in its neighborhood to be policed by the Americans. There will be events which require the Chinese to act out of region. The natural disaster or a terrorist hostage incident involving large numbers of Chinese workers would require China to take action, and that entails forward bases or at least agreements from other states that China could pass through their territory. There are now tens of millions of Chinese around the world, in some cases housed in huge complexes for workers in parts of Africa. Hang on. Chinese workers, Africa, buildings.
China's impact on Africa. Not only is it Africa's single largest trading partner today, but China's practical investment diplomacy, offering buildings, roads, railways.
It's too laden with propaganda tone. I don't want that. There is this point.
Well, we said that China has done more for Africa than any other country.
I mean, it's true. That's not something anybody can argue with.
Yep.
I mean, they came, they laid down infrastructure. They actually did something that the European countries been around for 400 years and did nothing. That's why if you see Africa now hasn't been developed. France, Great Britain, Italy, Germany, these guys have been in Africa forever and it's never been developed. China just started putting interest in Africa. Now you have roads, roundabouts, like they're actually putting structure down.
Well, we said that.
Hmm. So it's kind of like a double-edged sword. A double-edged sword. It's kind of like two sides of the same of the coin. One good, one bad, like two-faced. Okay. China will struggle to become agile over the next decade. It could barely maneuver the People's Army's equipment to help in the aftermath of the devastating 2008 earthquake in Sichuan. It mobilized the army, but not their material. Moving abroad at speed would be an even greater challenge. Let me see where Sichuan is. Sichuan, okay. It's pretty much in the middle of China. This will change. China is not weighed down or motivated diplomatically or economically by human rights in its dealings with the world. It is secure in its borders, straining against the bonds of the first island chain, and now moving around the globe with confidence. If it can avoid the serious conflict with Japan or the USA, then the only real danger to China is itself. There are 1.4 billion reasons why China may succeed and 1.4 billion reasons why it may not surpass America as the greatest power in the world. A Great Depression like that of the 1930s could set it back decades. China has locked itself into the global economy. If we don't buy, they don't make. And if they don't make, there will be mass unemployment. And if there's mass and long-term unemployment in an age when the Chinese are a people packed into urban areas, the inevitable social unrest could be, like everything else in modern China, on a scale hitherto unseen. And that is the end of that chapter. Just some concluding thoughts. I think there is like something brewing in the grassroots, in the what's called in the underbelly of China. There's like the Han Chinese like infiltrating all the regions, like in Xinjiang and Tibet, and a lot of the indigenous people are really, really upset that their culture, their ideals, their faith, their belief, their whole way of life is being completely disregarded. And the Chinese are paying lip service to say that, well, we are being very, very sensitive to the localities. But these are all landlocked countries, as you can see. You can't have access to what's actually going on here. Whereas in Taiwan, the world's eyes is on Taiwan. But even then, I think native Chinese are getting quite frustrated as well. There's only so much you can grow. I mean, to cater for the needs of 1.4 billion people. I mean, that logistics of that is just mind-boggling. And I think China's extension out to other territories, like in Gurdwara and the Bay of Bengal and in Africa, I think is a case that you could do what you do in Xinjiang and Tibet locally, but if you start going out and imposing the same sort of like strong hand tactics in these regions outside, I don't think they'll be as submissive, for want of a better term. But anyway, yeah. Finish China. The next chapter we're looking at is America. I'm looking to forward to this one, actually. Get a good sense of the entire topography of America and see how that shapes out. It's quite interesting. I read a little bit of it, and it says that where each of these districts are divided, America seems to have succeeded, especially after the War of Independence, to unite each of the 50 states within this district, even Alaska as well. So that'll be the next chapter we'll be reading. If you like this long stretch reading and this analysis and this active reading session, then please do like and subscribe. If you've got any comments, then leave the comments below, and if you want me to read any of the works, then please do so. This is going to be quite lengthy, and I think after I finish a couple of books, I'll finish this one and then this next one, which is the Power of Geography, and probably a book on Palestine. I'm looking into that. I think that's quite important to cover as well. Palestine and Israel, we need to look into that region as well. But let me just leave it here, and thank you for watching, and please support my channel. Really grateful if you do, and thank you for watching as well. Truly appreciate you watching, and take it easy, and peace.